After remaining so dominant for the first half of the season, things seem to have taken a turn for the worse at Red Bull after a pretty disastrous Italian Grand Prix, especially for the reigning champion, with Max Verstappen finishing in 6th place and Sergio Perez in 8th. Well, joining me to dissect everything we witnessed, I'm delighted to have Jake Boxall-Legge, aka JBL, and Phil Cleeren. Now, Phil, I'm going to start with you. Red Bull were expected to be stronger in Monza than they were in Zandvoort, and yet they could only manage minor points, couldn't they? So what's gone so wrong for them?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a case of what's gone wrong in Monza, but more about what's been going wrong since Miami, since May, because they seem to have introduced some sort of balance issues to the car that they still haven't been able to fix 3 or 4 months on. So this is sort of the continuation of what we've seen from Red Bull since then, but the difference is at the time they still had a competitive car, whereas now they haven't really seemed to manage to add much performance to it, whereas McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull have all made steps, and now they no longer have the pace advantage to sort of keep grinding out wins and grinding out results. Obviously Verstappen received a bit of a drubbing in his own race in Zandvoort by Lando, losing by 23 seconds, and now it was they were the 4th best team. It was pretty bizarre. We've not seen that since Singapore last year, but it's really just a factor of they're not improving, everybody else is, and these balance issues that they've been having, that Max has been warning about for a long time, they're still there and they're not finding a solution.
Is it a surprise to you though, Phil, that we're not seeing Red Bull find a solution, as you put it?
It is a surprise because we haven't seen that from them. We've seen them as a dominant team for 2.5 years. Even as early as as late as this season, the fact that they've imploded just in a few months' time is really quite remarkable, because I think we were all talking in March about how this was going to be another long season, and Red Bull and Max Verstappen would just run off into the distance into the sunset with 2 world titles. And now it looks like the Constructors' Championship is all but gone, even if they're still leading, and even his Drivers' title is under a severe threat. So yes, it is a surprise, because we have not seen that sort of turnaround from them or from any team in a negative sense.
We're going to come to what Max has been saying in just a bit, because he's been pretty damning, hasn't he, about their chances. But JBL, you're our wingman here on this. I'm going to talk to you about the wing package, this wing package that Red Bull brought, a Monza special wing package that didn't seem to work. And when you looked at the speed traps, they were down at the bottom when it came to top speed across the weekend. What went wrong with that upgrade package, and what are they going to do about it?
Well, I think it's just symptomatic of the car as a whole. What we've got is, so let's just roll it back to what they brought this weekend. And it was a wing concept that they tried in practice at Spa. So you had these 2 sort of like little dips in the top surface of the top plane of the wing on the trailing edge. And so basically what you're doing is just dumping a bit more drag there, cutting out a little bit more of the wing that you're not necessarily going to need for downforce around the circuit. So the problem is the car itself just didn't seem to be at all. Well, the drivers always use the term balance, and that basically refers to the feeling at the front of the car matching the feeling at the rear of the car. So if it's unbalanced, that means that you've got this disconnect when you turn the steering wheel, for example. Either you've got understeer because the rear's not biting or doing too much, you're getting oversteer because the rear's doing too much or sliding or whatever. It's basically this sort of like you turn the steering wheel and the thing you expect to happen doesn't happen. And the low downforce sort of seems to exacerbate that, because in high downforce, when you bolt the downforce on, you can put a little bit more load through the tyres, you can kind of draw a little bit more out of the car. But when you're at low downforce, you're pretty much at the behest of your mechanical grip, your sort of like basically the aero package at a bare minimum as well. And they're just not able to get the tyres working in the right way. They're just not able to get the floor working in the right way. It just seems to be this sort of weird convalescence of factors and I don't think they even sort of quite understand what's going wrong per se. So it's very, very weird. It's a very, very weird turnaround because last year the car was so good in pretty much every condition apart from Singapore. Even at Monza the car was good, but this year it just seems to have exposed the weaknesses of this year's package. I think last year maybe a lot of the sort of like medium to high downforce circuits, they lived a little bit more on the combination of the floor, beam wing, rear wing sort of working in tandem, and then when you had the DRS effect, dumped a load of drag because the low pressure zone behind the car was shrunk, and then it grew again at sort of like a snap level, let's say. But yeah, this year's car doesn't seem to be doing that on the higher downforce circuits, and on the low downforce it just doesn't seem to have anything. You could kind of see that on Max's qualifying lap actually. The fact that he was almost 7/10 down on the pole lap seems to suggest that he's just got absolutely no feeling in it whatsoever. The car itself is good, quick, but he can't do anything with it, and that's the key limiting factor there.
Well, JB, I definitely want to speak to you about whether you think the changes behind the scenes at Red Bull have had an impact. Before I come to you, Phil, let's stick with Max Verstappen for a moment, because this season reminds me very much of 2009, where Jenson Button crawled across the finish line, fingers bleeding as he heaved his body over that line. And it was down to the points he scored in the first half of the season back in 2009 that really got that driver's title for him. Very similar with Max Verstappen, gaining a decent lead at the start and now faltering. And he's been stating, hasn't he, that he thinks that both championships are now going to be unrealistic. The team's championship, the constructors, we know how close McLaren are, but it seems like he's in danger, and he knows he's in danger, and he's almost a passenger. He's called the car undrivable, as we've said, particularly over the last 6 months. Is that a fair reflection of Red Bull at the moment, that they are just sitting ducks?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Max is not somebody to mince his words. He just doesn't sugarcoat what's going on. He's always giving a fair reflection of where the car is. And to him as well, it's nothing new. He's been saying this since May. Like, this is not normal, that people are catching us. We shouldn't accept it. We should keep improving the car, improving the balance. And he's been repeating that ever since, and it hasn't really happened. So we've seen in Hungary where he was very upset with the team, with the strategy and everything. Extremely sort of aggressive on the team radio, then had to sort of clear the air with his engineer afterwards in Spa. And now we've seen a bit of a different Max now. He's I wouldn't say he's accepted it, but he's sort of realized that he's done his part. He's told the team what needs to change, and that's now just up to them, and he can only really just do the best with the tools he has now. So yeah, what he said after the race is how he really feels, and he's right, because if Red Bull doesn't turn it around, then they will lose both titles, not just the constructors. He's been more composed, but I'm sure behind the scenes he will still be aggressive. We heard from Jos Verstappen afterwards, another person not to mince his words. He was, he didn't think Red Bull was able to turn it around anymore. So there's definitely, a feeling among the Verstappens that it's not going to happen.
Two Verstappen's not mincing their words. Helmut Marko not mincing his. Christian Horner wading in every now and then. It seems to be a perilous team at the moment, doesn't it? A team that are kind of struggling internally. But with someone like Max Verstappen, we've been talking over the course of this season with Max and with Sergio, particularly the first half of the season, how Perez's lack of points have hindered Red Bull, or could hinder Red Bull. And now Red Bull are struggling because of convergence and the other teams are gaining on them. That deficit in that first half of the season, Phil, has proven to haunt them.
Perez's deficit has proven to haunt them, but right now it's not even their biggest problem, because it's almost like the balance problems that Perez was having all season are coming to haunt Max now as well. So I guess in a way it strengthens Perez's case that it's not just him, it's the car. Both drivers are struggling now. So in a way it's sort of, it sort of proves Perez right to an extent, but that doesn't, he doesn't escape from the fact that he should have scored a lot more points when the car was better, and he hasn't done so. But again, even if Perez performs the way he should now, it still might not be enough for the Constructors' title.
Yeah, 8th doesn't look too bad, does it, when Verstappen's finishing 6th? Okay, let's go on to behind the scenes then, JBL. Over the course of Monza the weekend, our colleague Alex Kalinauckas was mentioning during some of the paddock videos that were put out that the changes behind the scenes, particularly Adrian Newey at Red Bull, have come to have a bit of an impact on the day-to-day operation there. Do you think this is part of a reason then that they've struggled recently? I know that sometimes we're guilty of putting too much on the fact that Adrian Newey. What are your thoughts?
I'll be honest, and Phil has already mentioned this has been happening since May, since Miami, and Newey was still at the team then. I know his role was reduced ever since he'd said, I'm leaving the team. But I don't think that you can put everything down to one man, as good as he is as a designer. I think this is more of a case of the car itself not being able to have that development room. And that's what you always want. It's like when you're developing a car, for example, you have to stop your, let's say, development work. No, you don't stop your development work per se, but you're developing the car over into the winter and for the new season. At some point, you have to say, here's a hard stop so that we can get the car built to this specification. And then everything that comes after that, that's your development path for the season. And then you sort of change it accordingly. It seems to me that Red Bull has built a car and it was able to be developed up to a certain point, but now it can't be. It's run out of potential, it's run out of room, and everything they try and put on it makes it worse, or it makes it more ill handling, let's say. It makes it harder for the drivers to extract something from it. So let's just say, for example, if they reverted to the car as it was at the beginning of the season, there's no doubt that Max and Checo would find it a lot easier to drive, but would it be faster than what they have now? Would the time that they lose trying to corral a car around a circuit be any less than what it would be for them to drive the car normally when it's got some balance in it? That's what you have to look at, I think. I think they need to look at their development path and go, what are we missing here? And if it is the case that the car just can't be developed, then there's not really much that Adrian Newey could do for it that anybody else in the organisation can't. And also, I think this is just a sort of personal bugbear of mine. For all of the things that that Newey has done for Formula One, for Red Bull, for Williams, for McLaren, he always sort of gets held up here and the rest of the team sort of get put down there and he's sort of put on a pedestal, and you've got like 1,000 other people at the team and they're all fantastic people, brilliant engineers, technicians, that sort of thing. And they've won these titles every bit as Newey has. So I think that, they're getting the flack for something that they've done as a collective, not as Newey and some others. I think that's sort of the distinction that we need to make. But yeah, I think it's just a case that the RB20, it's run out of development room. There's probably not much more they can get out of it unless they uncover something super secret in the next few races. But ultimately, it is going to be a test of clinging on, getting what you can, and hoping that, yes, Max can do a Jensen Button and just sort of keep his foot in the door until the very end. It's going to be interesting to see, certainly.
Yeah, you do have to keep in mind that Max still finished second in Zandvoort, didn't he? So not every race will be as disastrous as this one will be. Especially Singapore will be difficult. We know that. We've seen that last year when they really struggled with the bumps and the curbs, and that's not going to change because they haven't fixed that either. But Max is still Max. He will still be able to grind out results at certain circuits. So, as JBL says, it's damage limitation, but it's not a given that they'll just fall off a cliff from here. What I will say is that, and it's very easy to make a connection with people leaving or with turmoil, but you do see as an operation that there are some cracks there now. We've seen the pit stop. Max's pit stop was 6 seconds. He wasn't happy with the strategy they were on. At one point, he berated the team for falling asleep because he was asking if he could get more deployment, more power, and the team said, "Oh yeah, you can." And he was like, "Guys, come on, why didn't you tell me? I mean, we're not fighting for the victory, but we're still racing F1. We're still fighting for position. Like, we need to be sharp on all these things." And so there are a lot of things to tidy up at Red Bull for the next couple of races, and it's not just performance. So the entire operation needs to be tidied up a little bit.
Yeah, it certainly does. It'd be a major fall from grace, wouldn't it, if they go on to finish third in the Constructors, which could happen with Ferrari breathing down their necks and 8 races to go. Collective points across the board from the two drivers. Both drivers need to contribute to that pot, don't they? So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But that'll do for this video. Make sure you join us next time. We'll be looking at a fast, wild, and spinning performance from Mercedes' new driver for 2025. That's Kimi Antonelli. As always, subscribe if you like this video to stay across all of our coverage. But for now, thanks for watching.